In this video, we're going to continue to work with ZBrush in terms of materials and also lighting. So in the previous videos, we saw how we can work with painting and then we continue with materials. And now we're talking about materials, lighting, and rendering because these three topics go together. So I'm gonna open up here a project to work with the lights and the lighting. So you can take some of these demo projects in the Lightbox, but I'm gonna use this one here, which I developed earlier with the standard sample that I found on Lightbox of a female figure. So you can take the sample, or you can just get one of your model. So here in the left shelf, I want to open up the left shelf, and I don't want to work with the brushes this time. I want to work with the materials and lights and render. So I'm gonna take the light panel here, I'm gonna drag it and drop it there on the left, and then I'm gonna take the render, and I'm gonna also get the, well, I don't want to work with textures in terms of mapping and materials, but I want to work I'm gonna show you with HDRI texture or environment texture. So we saw those also in the material. So we are not going to focus on the material here, but remember that everything we do it's about materials, and we saw that in the previous video. We have two different types: matte cap materials and standard materials. Now, if you want to work with lighting in a more like accurate fashion, like working with the different lights, then you should use the, well, you have to use the standard materials. So to see which material I'm using, I'm just clicking and dragging with the picker. You can see I'm using the Air 2 for this character, which is a standard material, and that's going to be fine to work with the lining. So you can see this is just two different colors, but the same material. It's still the Air 2 materials to simulate like cyberpunk or like android cyber mechanical woman here. It's gonna be fine. And then I'm gonna move into the lights. Now you can see that by default ZBrush is using the wax material there and the standard light. So if I turn off also that light, you can see that we have like no lighting situation. Well, there is actually a little bit of light, and that's coming from like the gray background of ZBrush. So we can try to work a little bit also with that, which is there on the ambient. You can see you have like a flat lining that is gonna override everything. Well, it's not really bad. It looks like you know, comics kind of Sin City look like with the black and white. You can also adjust the render later, increasing the contrast. But you can, you know, this is, if I render this using the BPR button on the right toolbar, it's gonna look pretty flat. So always you need to render when you want to test your materials and your lighting. This is why materials, lights, and render go together. So I'm gonna add more of these little lights, which are represented by this lamp button. So you need to click once to get on the light, and then twice to turn on or off the light. So I'm gonna just turn on everything, and you can see it's getting really bright. So try to avoid over bright situations like this. Try to work with the lights that you need. You don't need to open up them all. So work then with the intensity. So I'm just gonna use a single light for this first example. So there you go. I have like an orange light. You can change the color and then adjust also the ambient accordingly. So you can see that it's really easy to work with lights here. It's just, you don't need to place the light inside the scene. You just need to click there, activate the light, change the position on the sphere, change the intensity, change the color, and there is your light. There's your like customized light. Let's change here, for example, to white. There you go. And then you can click on that orange dot and change the position. So you can customize the lighting to your need to your likings. And then run the render with BPR button on the top right of the toolbar on the right. And there we go. So this is kind of more already a little bit more realistic than before, but we're gonna see other techniques, other tools that we can use to increase realism and quality. Now we saw that talking about materials are just reacting to light, and based on how they react to light, you're gonna have different material effects. So we talked about the diffusion or diffuse channel or texture, and also the specular or specularity or like reflection. So we're gonna talk in this video about how to set up a 3-point lighting. So this is a little bit of theory that we're gonna do, and then we're gonna move into practice back into ZBrush. But before we start, it's really important to understand this really basic and simple technique that is gonna get you really easy to the next level of realism, and it's going to increase the quality of the render in terms of well, lighting, and also in terms of three-dimensionality. So it's going to make a more three-dimensional picture or render of your character or your product or your you know, animal, whatever you have sculpted and painted in ZBrush. So you can see there are many information here on 3-point lighting. But essentially, it's a three light system. So you have an object or a subject in the middle, and then you have a key light, which is the most important light. Then you have a fill light, which is used to compensate the shadows on the other side of the key light. And then you have the backlight, which is coming from behind, and it's gonna like detach the subject from the background. So you're working with like foreground and background, so you have that depth, you have that tri-dimensional effect. So this is another scheme right here, but you can find many just going around here, showing you also like where the camera usually is placed. But this is just the beginning. So you can see here, this is the first picture is the key light. Second one is key light plus fill. Third one is all three lights, and the backlight is in red, so it's really visible, and you can see how it's coming from the back is kind of creating a silhouette on the back of the subject. And again, you will find many examples here, so just look for it and you will find everything you need. Now we're gonna try to recreate some of these examples in ZBrush, but essentially that's the basic. Then you can also continue and create more. Now another way you can create lighting in ZBrush, but also in other software, is the HDRI system or HDRI technique or image-based lighting, also called IBL. And here, if you look for HDRI environment texture, we can go back here to Polyhaven, which actually has a lot of HDRIs that we can use for outdoors. We can use some HDRI for interiors, like indoor. And you can see you have many scenarios depending on your object. So, and also we have studios. So if you have like a model, a man, a woman, you can place it in a 3D studio. If you have like a car, you can place it in an outdoor HDRI. If you have like a chair or a piece of furniture, you can place it on an interior. So depending on what you need to render, you can choose a different HDRI. And this goes for also other software and other render engine out there, like V-Ray. It's probably one of the most popular. And then you have like Unreal Engine also. It's another really important render engine. You have Octane, you have Corona, and you have Arnold, which is for like Autodesk and 3D Studio.